Okay, so I've seen various pieces of commentary regarding the Laterras Whitfield wedding to his wife, Ashley Whitfield. And I thought it was very interesting, the viewpoints that people had regarding him and the likelihood of the marriage working out. And I just wanted to bring up another perspective that I had not heard anyone hit on, and it is that of his sons. I guess more in particular, his youngest adoptive son. I believe his name is Ladarian. And I saw an interview recently where I think he said he was 17 years old. And prior to the wedding, I think shortly after the engagement, Laterras did a Dear Future Wifey episode by himself where he talked about how his then fiance was getting closer, getting to know Ladarian better, and that one day she sat with him and heard him out. And then at the end of that conversation, he just came out and said, "I love you" to her. So this is what Ladarian said to Ashley based on Laterrius's account. And so Laterrius was just saying that Ladarian doesn't really open up to anyone. And so that was a pretty big deal when he did that to Ashley back in, I want to say it was early August of 2025. And so he got engaged to Ashley in July 2025, and the wedding occurred November 22nd of 2025. So something to keep in mind, after I watched that interview, and I thought how touching that was, is the perspective of the young person involved, right? That child. And again, he's 17 years old, so he'll soon be 18 and going on about his life. But unless we've forgotten, we pick up a lot of our behaviors from what we've seen from grown-ups in our lives. That include parents and guardians and anyone else in our lives that we're surrounded by when it comes to adults that we meet as we grow up, right? So I just thought about the fact that Ladarian actually, based on what he's saying, the way Laterras behaves toward Ashley at various points throughout the time that he's there living with them, he's going to emulate some of that behavior in his own future relationships. If he's in a relationship now, he may be emulating some of that behavior right now, but it's definitely going to come out as he grows up into a full grown man. It's going to come out. I don't want to trigger anybody, but if we go back to our own childhoods and we've watched how our parents or guardians, whoever was the person that took care of you, engaged with other people. And we probably could, if we're honest with ourselves, see some of that within us. Some of that within us. I just do recall one thing about my parents. My parents been divorced 30 years now. They are friends today, but right after that divorce 30 years ago, no, they were not friends. But when they were married, I recall being a very young child and they were fighting a lot. So there was just a lot of anger built up in myself and in my younger sister. And as adults, we had to go and, undergo therapy to help us through the anger issues. Now, I'm not saying in any sense, all these things are my parents' fault and all that stuff that happened years ago. I'm a believer that, whereas the child is not to blame when the child is a child, when the child grows up and becomes aware, the child is responsible for going to receive help like therapy. So that's just an example there. Because I watched the behavior of my parents back when I was a child, I felt like acting in, a more angry way was suitable for relationships. And I do recall when I was initially with my now ex-husband, we did get in our fair share of arguments, and it did die down by the second half of the marriage. We were married 3 years, but by the midway through the marriage, I thought, okay, doing things this way doesn't make sense. I was receiving therapy, so I stopped doing, my old habits. And, given the fact that I had already been going to some therapy some years prior, I just ultimately decided doing things that angry way wasn't going to work. So mind you, at this time, I'm in my 30s, and I'm making that decision. So what I'm saying when it comes to Laterra's nephew slash adopted son, Ladarian, as he grows older and he's watching how Laterras treats Ashley, he's going to get his ideals on how to treat women that way. Okay? If he treats her, with much respect, then Ladarian's more likely to go out treat women with a lot of respect. If on the flip side he's seeing Laterras treat her with disrespect, it is more likely Ladarian will treat women with disrespect. But obviously, I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. As a young man, he has his own ability to think for himself. I'm just saying the likelihood is higher of him emulating Laterra's behavior because that is the man in his life, his immediate father figure in his life. So it makes sense that he would immediately emulate that person, right? Just like in our lives, that person, that adult figure in our life, we would immediately emulate some of their behaviors, whether we want to admit it or not. There's some aspects about me that people, they'll look at me and say, oh, you're like your mom in this way. And then, some other aspects about me, some people like, you're like your dad in this way. I mean, not only the fact that I look just like this man, but just in some personality, some ways with my personality, just kind of a more of an easygoing, fun-loving person. Like, hey, I'm fun-loving until I'm not fun-loving. Well, you didn't cross me, and then it's not a terrible person, but he's not the person that you want to see come out, right? So I feel like that with my daddy, but my mama, she could be, very straightforward and stern and, hey, you're not going to disrespect me in my face, just come up to me and disrespect me. So I pick up these elements from both of my parents, but you could probably look at yourself and consider, okay, what characteristics, what personality traits did I pick up from my own parents, my own guardians, the grown-ups that were in and out of my life as I was growing up. But it's not really that much different when it comes to the terrorist adopted son, his nephew, right? I mean, he's already been watching some behaviors since he's been adopted by him for some time now. And so he's going to look at that as positive. He's going to look at if people ever praise Laterras for anything, and he's going to consider that in his own life. Like, oh, I might go this route because Laterras was praised for it, so I might be praised for it too. So just something to think about. I just thought about that one day, especially taking in some of the commentary regarding Laterras Whitfield marriage to his now wife, Ashley. And but if nothing else, you'll see how things are going through the children, but definitely that youngest one. You don't really hear much about the older adopted son, but you definitely hear more about that younger adopted son, that nephew of Laterras. It will be interesting. I pray, that Laterras is treating that woman with respect. I don't know what to expect going forward. I pray that it's something sincere and genuine, but God, I obviously know everything that's going on and that's happening and behind the scenes that we don't see and what we don't know. And I pray for the benefit of that child that the right thing is happening because that child's life matters. Just like it, I'm a speech language pathologist. I work with kids. Those kids' lives matter to me, and I want the very best for them. But just something to keep in mind. And hope this has been good for you. And I'll see you on the next time. Bye.